The Los Angeles Dodgers once again strike in the free agent market as they are closing in on a deal with free agent all-star closer Kirby Yates. We also get 3 brand new Hall of Famers, Billy Wagner, CC Sabathia, and almost by unanimous vote, Ichiro Suzuki. That and more ahead next here at The Upside. And welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. A little bit earlier start for us than usual, but I appreciate you guys joining us. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you are new here. Follow us on X at UpsideSN and on Facebook at Upside Sports Network as well. Appreciate you guys joining us early on a Tuesday evening, but some incredible news for the Baseball Hall of Fame as they get 3 new inductees. Ichiro Suzuki almost gets unanimously inducted into the Hall of Fame. He misses it by 1 vote as far as being a completely unanimous player there. Mariano Rivera is still the only player, at least in current baseball times, to get to have received that honor. Not even Derek Jeter got that honor. CC Sabathia, absolutely deserving, great career. I remember him very well with the Cleveland Indians. He just had a great career from start to finish. I remember him as well with the New York Yankees. Just the playoff pedigree, the will to win was, no higher in CC Sabathia than in anybody else, and he rightly deserves the call to the Hall. And then Billy Wagner, for my money, I would say he's probably the second most effective closer we've ever seen. Mariano Rivera, of course, the greatest of great relief pitchers ever. Then you get into the class of like Trevor Hoffman, Billy Wagner, Dennis Eckersley, that level of reliever. And for my money, pitch for pitch, Billy Wagner was every bit as good as the other guys, and he deserved to get in the Hall of Fame. Now, understandably, it was a shorter career, didn't have the longevity that some of the other guys had, also had some struggles in the postseason. But, during the 162, which you're primarily judged off of for your Hall of Fame candidacy, he was fantastic. The only issue is whether or not he was going to be kept out in his final year on the ballot because of that shorter resume, because of the postseason struggles, and ultimately the baseball writers made the right decision by getting, for my money, the second best closer we've seen as far as effectiveness in Billy Wagner into the Hall of Fame. Appreciate you guys joining us. Welcome in Holly, Verlis, Nando. Thank you guys for joining us once again. Nando, Kopech going to have Tommy John surgery. I did not see that. I did see Kopech was having some injuries there. I know Gratterall is going to miss about 2-3 months of the season. He'll be back around the All-Star break, maybe around the trade deadline. That's why they're making the acquisition of Kirby Yates. Last night during our live show, we kind of talked about how the one hole left on this team, at least in my eyes, was that they could use one more bullpen piece. That's no longer the case. They solidify that if they get the deal done with Kirby Yates. That's exactly the move that they needed to make, as far as I'm concerned, to solidify themselves as the unquestionable favorite to win the World Series. Now again, you still have to go out there, play the game. Anybody can beat anybody in a short series. How often have we seen the greatest regular season team that year ultimately win the World Series since the end of the New York Yankees' reign? That's right, it's been 6 times that the team with the best record since the 1999 season that we've seen them ultimately win the World Series. Last year's Los Angeles Dodgers were the most recent ones to do it. We'll see if they can do so again this year. But we haven't had a repeat champion since the New York Yankees there either. So we'll see if they can accomplish that feat as well. Ryan, baseball isn't fun anymore. Dodgers are a super team. Baseball, to me, is just as fun as it's ever been. Every single great team that we've ever had in any sport has done nothing but generate interest. And I get all the negative fans out there saying, I won't watch, I won't tune in, I swear we already know the Dodgers are going to win. I'm sorry. What did I just get through telling you guys? Which team ultimately wins the World Series after having the best record in the regular season? 6 out of the last, 25 years? You look at the Los Angeles Dodgers, they have plenty of injury red flags in that rotation. Some more in that bullpen. The lineup still has a little bit of platoonness in that lineup, and you're going to have some variables as far as health with Freddie Freeman coming back from injury. This is not a foregone conclusion that we can just say, cancel the 25 season, go ahead and do the CBA negotiations right now, and just give the trophy to the Dodgers. That ain't happening. So I get all the negativity. They get all the great players, it seems like, to most of the fans out there, but you can still go out there and make really big additions for your roster. For instance, Pete Alonso is still out there on the board right now for free agents. Alex Bregman is still available. Those are two of the top flight players that we entered into free agency with that are still available. On the pitching side, you still have Jack Flaherty as well. So I get all the fan bases, kind of belly aching about their team not being the Los Angeles Dodgers. But if the shoe were on the other foot, and you were the team that was in LA, and you were a fan of that team, wouldn't you want your ownership group to really push the pedal forward? Some teams are focused on managing their baseball team as a business. It is a business, after all. That's why they call it the business of baseball. Other teams are more concerned about winning championships, and some teams try to balance both. Now, the Dodgers right now are clearly rolling in money right now. That's why they have the flexibility to make the moves they've made. But my goodness, what a roster they've created this offseason. Sure, they didn't bring in Juan Soto, but they've done just about everything that I would expect them to do this offseason or could have hoped for them to do. The one thing I'm wondering about now is with all the, hey, we're not interested in Nolan Arenado talk, hey, we don't have room for Nolan Arenado talk, how quickly do they find the funds, they find the roster flexibility to get this deal done? They could easily trade one of their middle infield options to bring in Nolan Arenado to this lineup. Honestly, at this point, I don't buy any of the arguments that I've heard from Los Angeles Dodgers front office as to why they might not be a great fit for Nolan Arenado. After you spend the money on Tanner Scott, sure, you still had a hole in that bullpen. To me, they should have still added another piece. But to then go at the top of the market and get Kirby Yates as well, that's just incredible amounts of financial flexibility that they have to be able to bring in both of those guys, still bring in Roki Sasaki, Blake Snell, sign Kim, bring in Conforto, bring in Teoscar Hernandez. At a certain point, you can't cry, we don't have the budget for it, we've already spent the money, when you go out there and continue to add and add and add and add some more. They're going to have a $300 and probably $87 million payroll next season after they make the deal with Kirby Yates official, assuming they get that deal done. I imagine that deal is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 to $15 million per season, probably a 2-year pact, maybe more. Kirby Yates was expected to get a 1-year, $14 million deal at minimum. I'd imagine this deal is probably going to be for multiple years. Remember, Kirby Yates last year signed for only 1 year, $4.5 million with the world champion Texas Rangers. Now he's going to sign again with a team just coming off a World Series championship. He's getting towards the end of his career. Maybe he's just trying to hunt for rings right now. No better chance to do that right now than with the Los Angeles Dodgers. We'll see what the numbers ultimately come in at for him, but my goodness, this Dodgers team is absolutely loaded. I'm curious to see if they try to circle back to Nolan Arenado before we get to the start of the regular season. We'll see if that ultimately happens or not. Let's check in on a few of these other comments here. Welcome in, Cowboys Nation. Ethan, Graham, appreciate you all joining us this evening. Pete Alonso to Texas could happen, apparently. Well, now that they're not going to spend the money on Kirby Yates, they're still going to try to address that closer situation. I don't buy that they're going to go cheap at that closer spot with a Mark Church or whoever they have internally. I think they're still going to try to bring in a proven closer. We've discussed the trade market as far as some options quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. Kenley Jansen is available in free agency. Carlos Estevez has been connected with the Rangers over the last couple of weeks as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they went the free agent route with a guy like Carlos Estevez. Cubs are also interested in his services. Other bit of news anyway from the MLB today is the Toronto Blue Jays and the Detroit Tigers are still looking to make some big-time additions to their roster. Things for the Tigers have kind of stalled around Alex Bregman, but they remain interested in Alex Bregman. That tells me Bregman could be a better fit with the Red Sox, Blue Jays, or Cubs if the Tigers just are that risk-averse to signing another long-term contract. For the Blue Jays, this can only be good news for them because I think Bregman, as of a week or two ago, would have had the Blue Jays as a distant third place in the running for him. Tigers being 1, Red Sox being 2. Cubs have recently entered the fray as being a dark horse team here. I wonder if they jump in there and try to offer him a really big deal on a short-term contract, something like that. But right now, I still think Bregman's going to do very well in free agency. I think a team like the Toronto Blue Jays, if they push the pedal down and spend the money on Alex Bregman, say they give him 7 for $210, which has been my estimation for his contract all along. Say they give him that type of a deal. Does Vlad Guerrero Jr. say, all right, I believe in this team's future, bring in Jack Flaherty, and we'll call it a great offseason for the Blue Jays, and we'll have a team that we can march into the playoffs with and possibly have some great success with. But this offseason could not have gone worse up until the signing of Anthony Santander for the Blue Jays. They might be able to pivot this thing into a positive offseason. Pete Alonso is still out there. Bregman, Flaherty, those are all guys that they've been connected to. We'll see where they ultimately go. One other player that they've been connected to, along with the Houston Astros, is Jurickson Profar. All along, he's been looking for a 3-year deal, probably in the neighborhood of around $30 million. I wonder if he gets that in free agency. But with George Springer's deal coming up here in another year or so, they could have some outfield spots available for Jurickson Profar, and there's no guarantee that he's going to be healthy for an entire season. George Springer, that is. So having another outfielder like Jurickson Profar, who's coming off a great year with San Diego anyway, I think would give them some great outfield depth as well. This team is trying to push for contention this year, and they still have more work to do. They are not close to being finished as far as I'm concerned. The biggest thing they need to worry about, though, is getting that extension done with Vlad Guerrero Jr. That's where the offseason begins. That's where it's at, and that's where it's going to be ended at. That's how they're going to judge this offseason by, because if they don't get that extension, all of these moves are going to be less impactful than that extension would have been, and this would have been seen as a miss as an organization to not get that deal done. Whole lot of headlines will be said all regular season long up until the trade deadline. Hey, you going to trade him if you're out of contention? Hey, how are you feeling about Toronto today? Hey, how are you feeling about the team and what they added in the offseason? Hey, do you think they should trade for more pieces at the deadline? Hey, do you think they should trade you at the deadline? Hey, where would you like to go at the deadline? Those are all the headlines we can expect to come out of Toronto if they don't get that extension done with Vlad Guerrero Jr. You guys tell me, does that sound like a distracting environment or a place that you can perform at your best and not have something off the field like a contract distract you from having a great season? Now, Vlad Guerrero is a great player, and I expect him to overcome a lot of the struggles that he has, even if they don't get that extension done. But as a player, I would like to have that security. Maybe he just wants to go to free agency like Kyle Tucker does, but he's at least left the door open to discuss a contract extension before they begin spring training. Once they get there, doors closed, he will be going to free agency. All right, Cowboys Nation, it'd be great to watch them fall short as they typically do. Devlin Manfred is killing the game. I don't know about if Manfred is. I think that's just the way baseball is set up right now. Now, during the CBA, there will be some heavy discussions around the international draft, bonus pool money. They'll be talking about the deferred contracts. They'll even be discussing a possible salary cap. There's been a couple of articles written over the last couple of weeks detailing if the league was comfortable or if ownership was comfortable with locking the players out until they get a salary cap done. Ken Rosenthal talked about it on his Fair Territory podcast this week. I just find the whole thing, when you talk about baseball and a work stoppage, just immediate cringe. We saw how bad those effects have been over the years, and with the success baseball has built up ever since COVID, to kind of mitigate that right now by having another work stoppage, I mean, that just would not bode well for the sport. And again, you lose the faith of the fans, the trust of the fans that you can handle your own business. And for me, I would try to do everything in my power to keep the game on track to being played as normally. The last thing they need right now is another work stoppage, and we could be another year or two away from that. Graham, who are the Dodgers cutting from their 40-man roster for Yates? Honestly, I think they're probably going to try to trade a player or two. I don't necessarily think they're going to try to go the DFA route too often here. Maybe some back-end pieces could be end up leaving off of this roster. But for me, I think they're going to try to go the trade route. Middle infielders would be one place they could look to move players. Plus, they could wait to get that Kirby Yates deal official until they get closer to spring training when pitchers and catchers report, because then they could put some of those pitchers that are going to be missing, a month or two of the season, put those guys on the 60-day IL, and then immediately have the roster room to get that deal done. So Clayton Kershaw, for instance, he may sign during spring training. He may wait until the regular season. No rush on his deal. He will be back with the Los Angeles Dodgers this year. But just something to kind of keep in mind there as far as the Dodgers trying to use their roster flexibility by, maybe making these deals official as we get once we get to spring training. That way they can put those other guys on the 60-day IL and keep their roster flexibility there. Cowboys Nation, not true look at the NBA ratings over the last 20 years after these super teams started. Well, I will say viewership was up every single year those super teams were there. Now, yes, NBA numbers in general are down before the Christmas break, or once you get to the Christmas games, generally you see an uptick in viewership goes. But as far as the super teams go, with the Miami Heat in the late 2000s, or 2010 region anyway, the Golden State Warriors, the New York Yankees, and now the Los Angeles Dodgers, you're going to see bigger numbers as far as the games that they produce. And remember, last year with the Los Angeles Dodgers, that was the highest rated road team that we saw last year. So the Los Angeles Dodgers already, pique a lot of interest, especially internationally. And the Los Angeles Dodgers are now that evil empire in Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball works a lot better when they have the evil empire New York Yankees as far as viewership, interest in the game. I wonder if that's the kind of the route they're going to see over the next couple of years as far as the growth in the game because they have that evil empire once again. Nando, Dodgers making other teams sell out their home games? Yes, they absolutely will. It's no longer just going to be the Yankees. Whenever the Yankees come to town, that's the must-buy ticket. Now the Los Angeles Dodgers are that must-buy ticket. The home teams can crank up those ticket prices for those games. Those are going to be a premium. And because of the changes to the schedule that MLB did a couple years ago, you're going to have a good chance to see them in your favorite city. So we'll see what the Dodgers do this year. You still have to play the games. Alrighty. Try to catch up on a few of these comments anyway. The players, you're letting a billionaire club pay you off interest. They'll pay 3 contracts off interest alone on Ohtani's deal. I'll put it this way. Whatever the player gets as far as, the player has to negotiate or gets the deal. He has to agree to the deal. The agent negotiates it, but the whole point of the deal is to get what the player wants. If he didn't like the deal, he wouldn't have to sign the deal. He's a free agent for a reason. If he wanted the committed dollars, like for instance, if Tanner Scott wanted a straightforward contract, he could have gotten that with the Chicago Cubs, 4 for $66. He chose to go with the deferral signing bonus to go with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Why? Because of course the Dodgers are of course a chance to win a World Series, but also you have a real chance to play in a place that he likes possibly. Also the money. Just the present day value sure might be lower, but he's getting more money overall, so he might have been happy with the money he was getting. Not necessarily everything is about money, but it certainly helps when the dollar figure total is bigger than what you're getting from other teams as well. That's one way the Dodgers have been able to give these type of contracts by having those deferrals there. Michael, welcome in. Congratulations to CC, Ichiro, and Billy. Close call with Beltran. Do you think the cheating scandal kept him off the first ballot? He will get in with Utley and Jones eventually, I'm sure. Love CC. Absolutely, congratulations to all 3 of those. Ichiro easily should have gotten in by unanimous vote, in my opinion. Wagner absolutely should have been earlier than this. CC deserved to go as well. As far as Beltran, I think the scandal with the Houston Astros was one of the primary reasons why he didn't get in as early as we had hoped he would get, or as he would do. But I think he will get in on the next ballot. Same thing with Andrew Jones. Chase Utley had a big uptick in his votes as well. And I think he'll probably miss next year, but he might get in the following year. Welcome in, Jonathan. Appreciate you joining us once again. Cowboys Nation, we can cancel the 27 season now. There is certain ground swelling within within the MLB, business anyway, that we might see that 27 season canceled because of the CBA negotiations. I'm really hoping that doesn't happen because I think that would do nothing good for the game of baseball long term. Even if you got a salary cap in place, the costs of getting that done would be so detrimental to the league. I'm not sure it would be able to recover nearly as well as they would hoped, or to the level they were hoping if they miss an entire season trying to hammer out a salary cap as well. Holly, the Dodgers might as well sign everyone that's left on the market. Well, you can only have so many players on your active roster, and I think the Dodgers, are pretty darn close to having their roster completely filled out, even after they put players on the 60-day IL. They could still move a couple of middle infielders, back or some middle relievers out of that bullpen as well. Those are kind of the flexible spots for me on this roster. That's why I wonder, with all the negative comments they said about why they can't bring in Nolan Arenado, if they finally just stop playing games with us and say, we were just playing coy the whole time. We were just trying to get the Cardinals to pay down as much of that deal as we could because we wanted to, save as much money as we can. Look at the deferrals, signing bonuses, as far as how we've negotiated our deals. We wanted the Cardinals to be able to retain as much salary as we could so that we could, save as much money in the long run. Maybe that's the reason why they've, been so negative against it. But at this point, They've spent the money and continue to spend and spend some more. And oh, by the way, add even more money to the payroll. And yet they're still telling us that they wouldn't necessarily see him as a great fit on this roster as far as a roster construction standpoint. Not buying that. They're also telling us that the money necessarily isn't there for Nolan Arenado. Excuse me, how much money do you have on this roster already? 375 before you even get Kershaw in there, before you even get Kirby Yates. This payroll is going to exceed $400 million once they get both of those guys in the clubhouse as well. This is going to be the biggest payroll we've ever seen by a mile, and probably going to be the biggest payroll we've seen or will see over the next 5 or 6 years. Now, sure, the Cohen tax was there, to try to discourage, owners like Cohen to spend at the levels that they might be able to, but it's not Steve Cohen that they're having to worry about now. It's the Los Angeles Dodgers. But to your point there, as far as the ballots that you mentioned there earlier, Michael, absolutely love CC getting in, Ichiro getting in, and Billy. Let's go ahead and check out how the voting worked out for everybody real quick. In case you guys didn't catch the news, Baseball Hall of Fame voting was done. And let's go ahead and scroll up here. The blue here in this column is the what the actual vote turned out to be. So Carlos Beltran ended up getting 70% of the vote. They had an 11% drop in the known public ballots versus the private ballots. That's a pretty big drop anyway for him. I thought he had a real chance to get in. Ultimately, looks like he missed it by like 5 or 6 votes. I think he'll get it next year. Either that or he'll be 1 vote shy again, and then he'll get in on the 5th year. But Carlos Beltran will get in. Carlos Gonzalez, Curtis Granderson, Carlos Gonzalez, Curtis Granderson, Torrey Hunter ultimately fall off along with Adam Jones, Ian Kinsler, Russell Martin, Brian McCann also falls off. Hanley Ramirez will fall off the ballot. Fernando Rodney will fall off the ballot as well. Andrew Jones was tracking at about 72-73%. He finishes with a 6%, 7% drop at 66%. I expect him to get in probably in another year or two. The 66%, he's about 9% away from reaching the Hall of Fame. For me, I think he gets over 70, 71, 72% next time on the final ballot, on the final count next year. And then maybe he's a year 10 guy that gets in like Billy Wagner did this year. The rest of the list here, Francisco Rodriguez ultimately did get enough votes to stay in the running, or to stay in the running here. He finishes with 10% of the vote. Alex Rodriguez gained a few votes anyway this year, up to 37% of the vote overall. But doesn't look like he's going to be tracking towards the Hall of Fame, unfortunately. Same thing with Manny Ramirez. He actually looks like he went down as well. He went to 34% of the vote anyway. He's not getting in the Hall either at this rate. Let's see if we can catch up on the rest of these numbers here. All right, so the rest of the guys, CC Sabathia ended up getting 86% of the vote. Ichiro only didn't get 1 vote anyway. He finished at 99.7. Other guys who will be dropping off the ballot, Troy Tulowitzki. Thank you for your service, but unfortunately he did not get a vote for the Hall of Fame. And Ben Zobrist falls off the ballot as well. Billy Wagner, of course, got in. Looks like he got 82% of the vote. Good for him. As far as other players who made big gains this year, Chase Utley was tracking around 52% earlier. Remember last year, I think he got around 25-ish% of the vote, 22% of the vote. A nice uptick for Chase Utley in only his second year on the ballot. But what a drop from the public ballot to the private ballot. I wonder if the positive momentum that he got this year translates to those private ballots that didn't necessarily vote for him this year. And maybe we see him spike to over 50% overall next year. But it's probably going to be a couple of years until Chase Utley gets close to Hall of Fame consideration. Jimmy Rollins actually had a pretty close public to private split anyway. Had about 20% public votes and ultimately finished with 18% of the vote. I think once Utley gets in, I think there'll be a legitimate push to get Jimmy Rollins in because I view them very similarly as far as their Hall of Fame candidacy. Andy Pettitte had a nice uptick in his numbers as well. Public votes were 32%. He finishes at about 28%. He's going to need a big push over the final 3 years to be able to get there. But congratulations to CC Sabathia, Ichiro Suzuki, and Billy Wagner as your new Hall of Famers this year. Good class to get in 3 of them. Let's go ahead and look at I think they have the next guys on this one as well. Um, Sometimes they'll have that on here. Nope, I don't see it on their list this year. I'll have to check it out and see who the first time eligible guys are for you next time we get on. Bobby Abreu tracked to about 24% publicly, finished at 19% in his sixth year of eligibility. Doesn't look like he's tracking to get in. Burley again falls a little bit here, finishes at around 11%. Looks like he's not tracking either. Torrey Hunter, he just does stay on the ballot with 5.1% of the vote. In the final tally there, good to see him getting that vote percentage there. Let me see though, is that? I think you have to get 5% of the vote. 5.1. They got him in red for some reason. Maybe that's just the public numbers as far as why they're in red. But he got over 5% in the actual vote. So hopefully Torrey Hunter stays on. I think he does though. Anyway, let's kind of catch up on a few of these comments anyway. Let's see here. Whole team is going to be the entire NL All-Star lineup. I don't think so. They still have guys like Acuna, Juan Soto's going to be there. Several other teams have great players as well. It's not just the Dodgers. Welcome in, D-Rod. Appreciate you joining us once again. LeBron ruined the NBA? I don't think so. LeBron is the king after all. He's the one who's kind of ran the league the last 20 years. And as much as you might not like watching him, as much as you might get sick of seeing him all the time, as much as he controls what he can control, he's been great for the NBA. Now, as far as other things that he could have done differently, controlling the team, forcing coaches out, just the way he's managed the roster. I want these veterans in here. I don't want rookies on this team. Managing the team as a GM, as a player, telling the GM how to build the roster. I think he could have handled those types of situations better than the way he did. But ultimately, he is King James. He chooses how he wants to play, who he wants to play with, who his coach will be, all those kinds of things. The first time we've really seen him play for a coach that he didn't pretty much co-sign on originally is the guys that he's had with the Los Angeles Lakers. First time he's really had that, and that's the one team that he had success with it early on with Frank Vogel, but he hasn't gotten close ever since. Agreed on both sides, caused a stoppage. Same case with the COVID season. Agreed, yes, I will say will be part of the reason why we could have a work stoppage there. Paul, welcome in. Carlos Baerga, latest tweet says Bregman to Red Sox could happen soon. Honestly, this Bregman thing is dragged out a little bit. I'm hoping they get that deal done by the end of the week. I'm hoping they get it done for sure before spring training. But at a certain point, you just have to sign on the dotted line. Bregman is the best bat available left. You could make an argument for Pete Alonso as the second best bat out there. But Bregman should sign a very good deal with the Red Sox, Blue Jays, or Cubs. If the Tigers ultimately decide to move on and not spend the money on Bregman, they could look to bring in Yohan Moncada, maybe an outfielder as well. They were in the running for Anthony Santander before he agreed to a deal with the Toronto Blue Jays. Cowboys Nation, Manny was a juicer too. Yes. John, with the Rangers deal with a parent media company, APMC, do you see an immediate impact on their spending this year, or will it be next year? I think they're going to spend about the level where they're at right now. I don't see them really going to the $275, $300 million payroll anytime soon. They have the financial might to be able to keep this roster very competitive. Do I think they'll spend at the level of the Los Angeles Dodgers, the Yankees, the Phillies, teams like that, the Mets? No, I think they'll play right up to the the luxury tax threshold before they ultimately cut off on spending. Now they might go a couple million over every now and again if they see a real opportunity, but they're never going to be a team that's going to be 30 million over at any point. Even with the TV money getting a little bit better for the Rangers, they're never going to be that team. They will have interest in all those players, and if they have the room underneath the tax threshold, absolutely they could make something like that happen, but they're never going to be a team that has a $285 million payroll and pay a $30 million tax bill or anything like that. They're not going to get anywhere close to that level, and I would expect the Rangers to still continue to spend, because they're still going to have financial flexibility even with the roster or even with the salaries they already have committed. They still can add another $15 to $20 million in payroll this year, and they still are looking for a closer. So by no means do I think that the Rangers are being cheap. I just think that they're going to be a little bit more smart about how they spend their money. Yes, it's a big market in Dallas right now. Yes, they got a great owner in Ray Davis, but he's not going to go dumb and just spend money just for the case of, or just for the sake of spending money. He's going to make sure that money is being invested well on this roster, and if it isn't, he's not going to spend the money. For instance, if you need an eighth inning setup guy and you're offering him $20 million a year and you're already over the tax, he's probably not going to do something like that. Now, if you're a World Series contending team and you get to the All-Star break and you look around at your roster and your starting pitching could use another starter in there, he would okay the funds to do something like that. But he's not going to say just at the outset of the offseason, say, hey, we're willing to go $40 million above the tax threshold just because we think we have a good chance to win this year. He's not going to do something like that. Michael, Hernandez was so good and pitched so many innings from age 20 to 30, he could have won as many as 3 Cy Youngs in what were close votes. By the time he hit age 30, 31, though, there just wasn't anything left. I'll agree pretty much on front to top to bottom on that comment, man. That's a good one. I mean, he was a very good pitcher. The win doesn't really count, obviously. The voters of the Hall of Fame have kind of learned that the win doesn't count for pitchers nearly as much as as far as the effectiveness of the pitch, those kinds of things, the innings that you log. And Hernandez was certainly the workhorse in Major League Baseball for a very long period of time. Now the wins obviously were an issue at the beginning of his career anyway. People didn't view him as nearly as successful of a pitcher as he should have been viewed as in the beginning of his career, but he certainly got his flowers towards the end, and I hope that continues to help him out going forward. Looking at where his numbers ultimately ended up, for Hernandez, he finished at 20% of the vote in his first year on. I would expect him to possibly get to the Hall of Fame maybe in 4 or 5 years. Opening at 20% is a good number. Let's see here. D-Rod, another example of hedge funds ruining something that didn't need to be finagled with. I'll put it this way. There is some great ownership groups in Major League Baseball right now that are willing to spend, willing to do whatever it takes to try to win. There are other owners that are willing to spend, but they don't necessarily have the financial resources of a multi-billion-dollar ownership group. And they're still willing to spend and make their team as best as they can, but they're never going to be able to compete on that level because they don't have that kind of, just throwaway kind of money. The team like the Mets has an owner that has throwaway kind of money. The Dodgers have an owner who has throwaway kind of money. A team like the Pittsburgh Pirates is not in that same boat. The Texas Rangers, while they've been willing to spend and spent really well, don't necessarily have that type of owner either. Jim Crane in Houston, not that way either. And as far as these hedge funds, I think they're actually good for the game as far as getting more money in on the ownership level, getting player contracts up. I think it's generating interest in some of those bigger markets. Now, does it hurt the smaller markets? Absolutely. So maybe we could see something during the CBA negotiations that maybe not be a salary cap, but make it more advantageous for teams that are going about things the rebuilding way, that are going through things the draft and develop way. If you reach certain thresholds financially, you get rewarded with more draft picks or get better draft position or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of kinks that could be worked out in that system, but there could be some type of financial benefit to forcing teams to spend money. Not necessarily having a salary cap, but having a salary floor. They kind of have that right now with the revenue sharing threshold that they have. Marlins, for instance, still need to add some payroll before they're in trouble with the Players Association, have a grievance filed against them so that they might lose their revenue sharing money there. But the Marlins have always been good about making sure they get that revenue sharing money and be able to benefit financially from it and build their team as a business. They do it very differently than a team like the New York Yankees or a team like the Mets lately, or definitely a team like the Los Angeles Dodgers. The King, he's awful ratings down 50% over the last 20 years. I mean, still, during those years when he had, or whenever the Heatles were on prime time, those teams, those games drew great numbers. We just saw that with the Los Angeles Dodgers last year. Greatest road team as far as attendance, as far as TV money, all those things because of the Los Angeles Dodgers. We're going to continue to see that with the Dodgers. And the added benefit, once you get to the postseason, if David beats Goliath in the postseason, say the Diamondbacks, who have a great rotation, and very well could knock off the Dodgers in a postseason series. The Dodgers, for all this great talent that they've had, have been knocked out earlier in the playoffs in the last 5, 6, 7 years. Then they've made it deep in the playoff run. So Dodgers are a good team, possibly the greatest team that we've seen over the last 20 years as far as on paper how they've been constructed. But they're just as susceptible in a short series of being beaten. But the added benefit of having a super team out there is all the eyeballs on your sport. Now that David, when they beat Goliath, when the Dodgers are beaten, say the Diamondbacks beat them and they go on to the NLCS and face the Mets, now the team that just beat the Los Angeles Dodgers carries that fan base with them because they're the team that slayed the Giants. Surely they're the team that's going to win the series. Now you have even more eyes on your sport. And that's just how baseball works. High tide raises all boats. Rowland, the only thing LeBron ruined was Space Jam. Yeah, that was awful. I watched that Space Jam 2 movie. If you've never seen it before, don't. It's terrible. I get he was trying to include his son in that, and good for him. But I mean, the Michael Jordan, Space Jam. Let's just say that should be the only one that should be recognized as a Space Jam movie. The LeBron one was just awful, just pure awful. Cowboys Nation, glad he got one for Cleveland, but he's not a Laker. Kobe over Flop James. That's a little harsh there with the nickname there. Kobe, I would say as a Laker is a better player, but I would say King James overall, as far as a career, certainly a better player than Kobe. May he rest in peace. And his legacy, calling himself the GOAT. I mean, he didn't call himself the GOAT. Let's just be clear about that. I mean, the greatest of all time, that talk started before he even got out of high school. He was the chosen one. He was the King James. Those were all nicknames that were given to him by other teams, by people who saw him play. King James never referred to him as that or as those types of things until he got to the NBA, and those were the nicknames that he was given. Then he just ran with it. He's a good businessman. He sees an opportunity, and he's going to take it. You give him a King James nickname, he's going to monetize it. You tell him he's the chosen one, he's going to monetize that. You're going to give him all this extra money. You're going to help him. You're going to give him all these great benefits for business out there in LA. He's going to monetize the heck out of every one of those deals like he should. And I get the haters out there for LeBron. There'll always be people who don't like Tom Brady. Always be people who don't like Patrick Mahomes. Always be people who don't like Michael Jordan or LeBron James or any of the great players that we've seen, Steph Curry. But at a certain point, greatness is still greatness. He definitely did call himself the GOAT. No, that started out elsewhere. Eventually, of course, he still calls himself the greatest of all time, but that's not how it started, my friend. That started from all the expectation he had around him. Let's see here. Robert, teams that get revenue sharing need to spend. Some owners are cheap. I agree with you there. For me, the revenue sharing thing is a good thing for smaller market teams, but there needs to be a better method for how they're able to get those funds. For instance, the Marlins, their whole business model is about getting those funds every single year and making themselves a profitable team just based off of that revenue sharing alone. Not based off of ticket sales, not based off how they perform or the playoff bonuses that they get if they make it to the postseason. They base their financial structure about how those revenues or that revenue sharing ultimately helps them out financially, which is a great insight to how that team really operates. Why Derek Jeter was so unsatisfied with how they went about free agency. Remember the Nick Castellanos pursuit there. Ultimately, he goes to Philadelphia, and we've seen how that works out there. But just goes to show you where their priorities are as far as building a better team or making money. And priority number one for them is making money. At least that's the way ownership views it there. Willard, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us once again. Billy Wagner was third best reliever in baseball history behind Mariano and Trevor Hoffman. Billy Wagner in their prime, no one in the ninth wanted to face them. For me, I still think Mariano is number one, but for me, pitch for pitch, Wagner's effectiveness during the season was higher than that of Trevor Hoffman. The numbers bear that out. I'd say the longevity for Trevor Hoffman might make him number two in your eyes, but for me, pitch for pitch, I'd rather have Billy Wagner, to save a game in the regular season than I would Trevor Hoffman. Now in the postseason, I think the small sample size really hurts him there. I think if he had more runs into the postseason, a better chance to succeed in that part of his career, I think he would have eventually seen his numbers kind of even out over the long haul. But ultimately, he didn't have a chance to do so, and you got to take his numbers for what they are. So in the postseason, give me Mariano Rivera, give me Trevor Hoffman, give me Dennis Eckersley. Wagner would be a little further down on the list in the postseason, but for the 162, Wagner, pitch for pitch, probably the second best reliever we've seen. There's no scenario where MLB allows the Dodgers to not win the World Series. Remember I said the Dodgers win it all? You're really going out on a limb there, Player Time. You're really going out on a limb. You're picking a real underdog there. No, the Dodgers are the favorite on paper. They should win the World Series. I expect them to win the World Series. Even if they face my Rangers, even if they bring in a all-star level closer, I'm going to pick the Dodgers to win the series over them. But they've got a great team. They still have to prove it once they get to the postseason as well. Bruce, welcome in. Can you express your opinion regarding if small mid-market teams can routinely compete for world championships when the Dodgers and other large market teams have such deep pockets? Yes and yes. Now, routinely, are we talking about every year for 100 years? No, every team, even large market teams, are going to go through a downward period in their team. For instance, the Yankees have been through a couple of those. Dodgers obviously had a lengthy one. Every team goes through ups and downs in their team. Now, as far as in general, are they going to have as much success as other higher spending teams? I would say the higher spending teams generally are going to have the better players and should and will have a better roster and have a better chance to make the postseason. Now, does that mean that they're not going to have a legitimate chance every single year to be competitive, to at least compete for a World Series, to maybe even win one? I'd say it'd be a little bit tougher for smaller mid-market teams, but it's certainly not impossible, and it's certainly very much in the capability of a team like Pittsburgh this year. We'll just use them as the case study. What would it take for Pittsburgh to win the World Series this year? Obviously, you need Paul Skeens in that rotation to continue to dominate. You need their offense to get at least a little bit better. Horwitz is going to have to prove you something, and that minor league depth is finally going to have to come through. Now, if that happens, would I consider them the favorite in a series over the Los Angeles Dodgers? Heck no. Would I consider them the favorite over the Mets? Certainly not. The Phillies? Certainly not. The Braves? Certainly not. They would probably be the fifth or sixth best team at best going into the postseason on just the National League side. Does that mean that they're not going to win? Does that mean that they don't have a prayer? Does that mean they should just fold up camp and say, hey boys, we had a great season, we won the NL Central, let's go ahead and pack it up and go home? No, absolutely they should go out there and still play the games. If Paul Skeens throws a no-hitter in game one, and they get their number 2, 3 starters to throw 1, 2 earned runs over 6, 7 innings, the Pirates could even beat a team like the Dodgers in a postseason series. Do I expect it? Certainly not. Would I pick the Dodgers to probably sweep them? I would. But I am still saying you still have to go out there and play the game. Now, to your comment there about routinely compete for world championships on the level of the Dodgers, no. I think we'd all be kidding ourselves if we looked at the Dodgers roster and said, hey, this team isn't going to sniff the postseason. I think that would be a far more rare thing than a team like the Pittsburgh Pirates, getting all the way to the World Series, for instance. So the Dodgers are a great team. I think they're going to continue to be a great team, and we'll see how they perform. Let's see here. Willard, even got to admit the Texans got screwed by the refs because this is the second time this season the refs handed the game to the Chiefs. No one can win against the Chiefs and refs. That's kind of a little bit overblown. Do they get their fair share of calls? Absolutely. Do they get more than their fair share? I would say so. But you still have to go out there and win. I think the Texans did enough to win, but just didn't quite overcome enough of the Chiefs. The Chiefs still do just enough to win. Whatever they got to do, they get it done. Now, do the refs seem to give them a favorable whistle at times? Absolutely. But if you look at the whistles that are whistled against the Chiefs and the whistles against the flags anyway against the Chiefs versus the flags against the whoever they're playing in the final 5 minutes, 2 minutes of the game, I can't remember what the stat was, but Fox Sports had the stat. It was 48 flags on the Chiefs, 48 flags on their opponent in the final few minutes of clutch time. So to say that those that the flags are completely against or completely for the Chiefs is a little bit misleading. Cowboys Nation, you didn't see the interview from the barbershop when he said that that one made me the GOAT. You better check the tape. Yes, the barbershop was after he had already come out as well. As far as the GOAT talk around LeBron, that all started before he even got out of high school. I think he was still doing like high school dunking competitions at that time, back when he was actually doing slam dunk contests, back when people were really hoping he could do that at the NBA level, which he never really did. That's something I think has been a real miss for fans getting able to enjoy him in that type of situation. But he did not give himself that nickname way back when. Cowboys Nation referring to beating Golden State after ridiculous suspension, ridiculous Dre suspension. Dre kind of earned that one, first and foremost. Just because it's the finals, whatever the case may be, you can't just make an excuse for a player, doing the things Draymond has done. I'm surprised he hasn't been suspended more, honestly. I think they've given a far more favorable, to our Chiefs commenter here, a far more discretionable eye to Draymond Green because of his role on that team than they really should have. And, I think now we view Draymond Green very accurately for the player that he is. He's very good defensively, one of the greatest defenders I've ever seen play the game. His intensity is unmatched in the NBA, but it can certainly go over the line, and we've seen that several times, and it does cost his team when, the referees during the regular season catch him at it. Now, during the postseason, they're far more lenient. They let him play, all those kinds of things, but even then, you still have to, let the players play, but you still have to be able to keep it within certain range there. You can't let them just completely go roughshod over the other team. Anyway, back to the the original comments here as far as baseball. Willard for sure. Let's see. I will tell you that if every team has $1 billion TV deal, then everyone would be equal. Not going to happen though. It's never going to happen. Every team having $1 billion TV deal. Not every team is going to have the same financial wherewithal as an ownership group. Not every team is going to be the same as far as how they choose to build their team. Even if you had a salary cap, there's going to be still some owners that are like, hey, why do I need to spend at the top of the limit when I can still have a great team if I continue to draft and develop? Why are we expecting that with the salary cap coming in, that it would automatically force every team to play at the top of that salary cap range? That ain't going to happen. There'll still be some teams who just want to play at the salary floor, that just want to do the bare minimum to get their revenue sharing, to minimize the costs that they have going out so that they can maximize their dollars coming in. Some of those teams are still going to be run as a business. Some of those teams are still going to be run as, trying to win a world championship. Those are things you have to take into account in every market with or without a salary cap. Bruce, do you feel DeGrom will throw 170 innings? No, I don't. I think DeGrom will be great this year. I think he's probably going to be, if he does stay healthy, best case scenario for DeGrom is probably 120 to 140 innings. And that's if he, stays healthy pretty much the entirety of the season, because I don't think they're going to allow him to throw deep into games. I think they're going to skip him starts at times. I think they're going to give him as much rest as he needs between starts, and I think he'll probably get, at best, 120 to 140 innings. I think the days of him getting, 200 innings are long, long, long gone. Love the Rangers, by the way. Appreciate you. I do. That's my favorite team, but I do enjoy great baseball all the way around. Whether it's smart baseball decisions like the Los Angeles Dodgers. Hey, I mean, I'm not a Dodgers fan, but I can still recognize they're doing everything in their power to try to win. If you're a fan of, say, the San Diego Padres right now, you absolutely hate seeing the Dodgers get player after player after player after player. You know what that means, though? Is that the Dodgers fans are sitting there celebrating with every paycheck that they write to bring in Kirby Yates, to bring in Tanner Scott, Roki Sasaki, Michael Conforto, Teoscar Hernandez, Blake Snell, and on the list goes. And they still may add more at the deadline if this roster has some deficiencies that they didn't foresee. But right now, they've done everything they possibly could to maximize the talent on that roster. Tim, Ichiro was one of my favorite players of all time. Good for him. I loved watching Ichiro play. It was just absolutely infuriating watching him just, slap a ball down the line and, just dribbles out there just past the pitcher in front of the first baseman. He's safe every single time. He'll just slap one over to third base and be able to beat it out to first. He was just great. That speed was great. His contact ability was great, and still had some pop, especially towards the end of his career. Just one of the greatest players we have ever seen in baseball history. No matter where he started, he was just one of the greatest players ever, and I'm very happy for him to finally get into the Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility. One thing I did catch in the news article, though, is that the Seattle Mariners today have decided to retire his number. What took you so long, Seattle? Were you waiting for him to get the call to the Hall of Fame to say, I guess he's good enough for them, so he's good enough to get his jersey retired here? What took you so long, Seattle? Come on, man. All right, Bruce, Michael Young was my favorite all-time Ranger, and then Rodriguez. For me, my favorite is Pudge. He was my favorite Ranger ever. Second favorite would probably be... I have a lot of guys that I don't necessarily like them one over the other, but I'll give you a list of them. Yu Darvish, Frank Catalanato, Nelson Cruz, Mitch Moreland, Rusty Greer, um, Bill Hasselman at one point was one of my favorite players because I was a catcher in Little League at the time, and Pudge and Bill Hasselman were the catching tandem for the Rangers. Mark Teixeira, Rafi Palmeiro, Kevin Mensch to a lesser degree. I know I'm forgetting a few guys. Joe Nathan, one of my favorite pitchers to play for the Rangers. Sam Dyson for a period of time. Rougned Odor. I wasn't a huge Elvis fan, but I appreciated what he did for the team. Let's see, who else? David Segui. Mark McLemore. There's several Rangers that I've liked over the years. You've never heard of another player call themselves the GOAT? Yeah, I've heard of a few. Players that don't necessarily need to be in that GOAT conversation. For instance, Nick Young in the NBA thinks he's the greatest player to ever play. That's not a greatest player of all time, by the way, in case you didn't know who Nick Young was. No, thank you. Let's see here. Look how wild that roughing passer was against the Texans, but tell me this is when Stroud threw the pass and just hit in front of the ref and no flag. Yeah, they did kind of miss one there for me on Stroud, but the one against Patrick Mahomes, well, it could have gone either way, and I don't necessarily fault the refs on that one, but they are going to miss some calls. I wonder if the NFL goes to some type of automatic review for any 15-yard penalty on some level. Just have somebody in the skybox saying, hey, guys, that wasn't a penalty. Hey, there was no contact to the head or neck area. Things like that. Michael, for DeGrom to ever pitch 170 innings in a season again would take a miracle from Christ. Whatever innings he does pitch will be some of the best, though. I kind of agree there. I think the Rangers, DeGrom very well could throw 170 innings. But I don't think the Rangers will ever give him the chance because they're going to try to save his arm and keep him as healthy as possible. Bruce, 150 is plenty if he can get 25 to 30 starts. That's kind of my thoughts. Just keeping him healthy, having him in your line or having him in your rotation throughout the entirety of the season, rather than trying to push his innings, one or two more innings every time he goes out there, would be more impactful to his long-term health than just trying to keep him to that shorter innings limit, keeping that pitch count down, and just making sure he's healthy once you get to October. Now, once you get to October, all bets are off, in my opinion. I think if he's thrown up to 100 innings in a game, if he's at say 6 innings and has only thrown 60 pitches, I think DeGrom in the postseason will stay in the game. Whereas during the regular season, they'll still probably try to pull him out. Willard, a concussion, no flag for penalty on a player who's hit Stroud. Apparently, unless you're Mahomes, nothing happens to anyone. I mean, I get it. Sometimes they miss calls. Bruce, I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I think Skeens will blow out his elbow because his torque, he torques that puppy more than any pitcher I ever saw. We will see an injury, unfortunately, I think, in Skeens. A lot of these younger pitchers have a lot of torque, a lot of spin rate, and I think that's causing a lot of the arm injuries that we're seeing over the last few years that are causing those injuries to really go up. I think San Francisco fans hate the Dodgers more, possibly, but I think the Padres right now are the better team out of the two. And for me, the Giants are going to get closer to contention, not this year, but next year. That's when they're going to have the financial might to bring in a Kyle Tucker, a Vladimir Guerrero, a Framber Valdez to help out that rotation. They could go any number of directions with the financial might that they're going to have next offseason. Willard, by the way, the next CBA, when MLB is forced to take away Dodgers special deferred contracts, that will be the Dodgers then, because the Dodgers will have to pay full contracts, not deferred. They're still going to have to honor the contracts that are already on the books. They're not going to say, hey, you had deferrals, now you don't. They're not going to do something like that. You can't rearrange contracts that are already agreed to. They will only put a cap on contracts that will be future deals there. Bruce, what about Juan Gonzalez? Thank you. Juan Gonzalez was absolutely one of my favorite Rangers of all time. Just a shame for how that ultimately finished out with the Rangers. But things might finally be cooling down between the two sides. He finally got honored by the Rangers recently. I think this past year, actually, they finally had him agree to join them to enter into the Rangers Baseball Hall of Fame. Let's see here. Kevin Brown, he's up there. Michael Young, to me, isn't one of my favorite Rangers. I liked him, but he wasn't one of my favorites. I liked a lot of other guys on the teams around Michael Young. I didn't necessarily like Michael Young as much as the other guys on the team. Nothing against the guy. I still like the player. Still like the guy as an individual. but he wasn't necessarily one of the guys that I was tuning in to watch the Rangers for. Lucas, welcome in. Hello, Upside. Just want to pop by before I go back to bed. Well, appreciate you joining us once again, Lucas. Thank you very much. Wilt Chamberlain was the greatest ever to even get checked. Jordan, who was talking too much wrong. Okay. Bruce, I think DeGrom is the greatest pitcher of all time who hasn't won 90 games. I have no idea how many games he's actually won in his career. Good point there, Bruce, though. I would say that as far as overall talent, I would say DeGrom is on that list. Johan Santana, in his tenure with the Minnesota Twins, was one of the greatest 4-year peaks we've ever seen from a pitcher. I think DeGrom is on that level as far as, pure dominance for that period of time that he was with the New York Mets. Mahomes is the face of the league, a.k.a. the new Brady. Yes, he is. Beltre was a good Ranger. Loved it when he pulled the on-deck circle close to him as a joke, and grumpy Joe West booted him. I don't think it was Joe West. That was a different umpire at first base that booted him, not Joe West. I can't remember who it was. It was the guy with the mustache. Blonde hair, shorter guy. I don't think it was the one that had the Galarraga perfect game issue. He looks a lot like him, though. Maybe it was the same guy. Anyway, you guys know what I'm talking about. The umpire that had the safe call at first base when Galarraga clearly beat the hitter to first base that cost him a perfect game. I forget his name, though. Anyway, Bruce, I read the article that said the ball is more slippery than ever, and pitchers have to grip it harder to get the spin they need on that hard grip, combined with speed, is causing injuries. Yes, those are some of the contributing factors there. Tim, the Rangers are lucky the Yankees took A-Rod's contract and Juan Gonzalez killed us. I wouldn't necessarily say the Yankees were lucky that the Rangers were lucky that they took the contract. Remember, they had a deal originally in place with the Boston Red Sox. The reason why that didn't get done is because they tried to change his contract in order to get the deal done, at which time they weren't really seeing eye to eye as far as the finances. Manny going one way, Alex Rodriguez going the other, and ultimately they didn't come to a deal. I still think they could have found another deal with the Red Sox there, but the Yankees, I like the trade that the Rangers did at the time to at least offload A-Rod's contract. They couldn't handle it financially, but as far as A-Rod, that trade anyway, Alfonso Soriano was part of the package that came back to Texas. That was good for them. Jim Joyce, thank you. Appreciate that, Cowboys Nation. Santana, 139 wins. For some reason, I think the number for Jacob is 84. Okay. You bet he won 150 games. To me, they're very comparable pitchers, though. They had a very short peak as far as like 3-4 years of being the greatest pitcher in the game. DeGrom has that honor. Santana has that honor. But I will say Santana had a little bit more success because of playing in the AL Central. Really helped out his win total numbers. As far as DeGrom playing in the NL East anyway, a little bit tougher to get wins there. And he had no offense to speak of as far as run support in that division either. And that's part of the reason why he's only got that many wins at the moment. DeGrom, 84, you do have a good memory. Yes, absolutely. Michael, a lot of factors. The age in which kids throw breaking pitches, the increase in velocity, horizontal break, ball grip, seam height, use of humidors and mud, lack of tack, inconsistent ball size and clock. Absolutely, all of those are contributing factors. Some more than others anyway. All right, let's go ahead and check out X and see if anything else is happening. I'm wondering what the numbers are going to turn into be on Kirby Yates. If I had to guess, we would see a deal for him around 2 years, 25, 2 years, $30 million for Kirby Yates. But we'll see where that number ultimately comes in at. Looks like we have a trade anyway between the Mariners and A's. We'll check in on that one here in just a second here. Whole bunch of talk about the Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame. Okay, let's head over to MLB Trade Rumors and see what this trade is. I'm not seeing it. Okay, so this is the trade. They got Will Klein from the A's. Mariners designated lefty Tyler J for assignment. Is Tyler J the one I'm thinking of that was drafted by the Twins? Maybe I'm wrong there. It was Jay that was drafted the same year that Dylan Tate was for the Texas Rangers. Anyway, he was the guy I was hoping the Rangers would have drafted outside of the shortstops in that class. Ultimately, he never proved to be the talent that I had thought he would be, but just an interesting name there. But Mariners once again add to their very deep bullpen, and a little bit surprised at the move that they're making here. The A's are getting international bonus space in return. That's a good bet for them as well. As far as the Sacramento A's, I guess you'd call them this year, they really need to continue to develop some starting pitching. They have developed some hitting prospects over the last couple of years, but their pitchers have really never panned out over the last few years now. They need to continue to develop some starting pitching. That's why you're seeing them having to bring in guys like Luis Severino to make the trade for Jeffrey Springs. They just need to bring in some minor leaguers with that bonus pool space as far as I'm concerned there. Bruce, if the league made the ball a little more tacky like it was years ago, then they could cut down on all the injuries. I would agree to a certain extent, but I think they like the runs that the scoring that they have because of that change that they have in the ball. I don't think they're necessarily going to add some back on there, just for that specific reason. Now, if there's a proven link as far as tackiness on the ball, that's absolutely indisputable. You have X number of injuries before, you have X number of injuries after. In a perfect lab simulation, then maybe the league will be open to it. But until there's some other reason to get it done, if there's not definitive proof that injuries will be reduced as a result of having more tackiness, rather than having pitchers just take advantage of that tackiness and throw even harder or try to throw with even more movement, those type of issues, they want to try to maintain the level of run scoring that they've generated with the ball changes that they've made. Teams emphasize quality of inning over quantity of innings. There are more roster spots. That's something I wonder if Major League Baseball looks into. If they expand the rosters to say 27, 28 players, and say 25 are active on game day, and just have those final 3 spots available for pitchers, to keep players healthier. That could be something we see in the future in the next CBA. I think they will make some adjustments as far as roster construction, at least as far as active player rosters, those kinds of things, rather than having the system that they do right now. I think there will be some changes that will address that in the next CBA. D-Rod, Bruce, I agree with you on the slick ball. My guess is the league wants more offense. It's kind of my thoughts too, is that the offense is the reason why they do it. Tim, does MLB still rub dirt into the game balls? I'm sure the pitchers try to do that, but I have not seen anything as far as MLB trying to do that themselves. Bruce, I bet they'll do something when the young star pitchers they're trying to promote blow out their elbows and they're on the shelf for a year. Well, we've already seen that and they haven't done anything. Some of the greatest pitchers in the game, Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer has missed some time due to injury over the last couple of years. We've seen Jacob DeGrom. We've seen other top level starting pitchers have those issues now. Younger pitchers. Maybe, I guess the Paul Skeens argument here is if Paul Skeens blows out his arm this year, then maybe they'll make a change. I don't think they'd do it for one pitcher of his caliber. I think there'd have to be a whole rash of injuries for that to happen. We just had it with Sandy Alcantara, Yuri Perez for the Marlins, a few others, but they've had those injuries before and haven't decided to make the change. I think there'd have to be another reason for them to make those changes and keep the offense up. Then they'll make some type of a change there. True, but those are old guys. I mean, young stars that represent the future. Yes, like Paul Skeens, Sandy Alcantara, Yuri Perez, Michael Gore. I think it's Michael Gore. Or is it Mackenzie Gore? Mackenzie Gore. The pitcher for the Nationals, anyway, that blew out his arm recently. Hunter Green missed some time as well. There's been some younger players that have had issues with their arms as well. And just, they haven't done anything yet. Now, have they been of the level of a Jacob deGrom? Obviously not. Have they been the level of a Paul Skeens? I would say Sandy Alcantara is, but they still haven't chosen to do anything yet, and I don't think they will unless there's a bigger, more impactful reason for them to do so. Alrighty, let's see. Just going to update our page here, see if anything else is happening. Just kind of recap everything that's happened for the day before we head out for the evening. Posted a video earlier today about the Kirby Yates tentative agreement anyway with the Los Angeles Dodgers. If you guys are new here, make sure you guys check that video out. Hit that like and subscribe. Strider, yes. Wells, Bradish, DeGrom, Ohtani, it'll continue, yes. good points there, Cowboys Nation. Appreciate that. Yes, they still use mud rub. Okay, you nailed it. But MLD does nothing, at least not yet. Absolutely, I think they need another reason to do it. I don't think there's been a established point A, point B clarified link between the two that would decrease injuries by X number of injuries per year. Get something like that, or have some other reason to increase the tackiness of the ball. Then we'll see some changes there. Brandon, welcome back. Appreciate you joining us. Do you think Skeens gets moved since the Pirates are cheap? No, I don't. I think they're going to try to get an extension done with him. I think at the very least they'll hold on to him for at least 3 more seasons. Then after that point, if they still can't come to an agreement and there's 2 years left on his deal, or at least 2 years left of arbitration, then and only then I think they'll revisit the idea of possibly trading Paul Skeens, which they should, and they should get a bevy of future assets for him at that point. Strider just got injured. Strasburg is the true cautionary tale. Sale was hurt before 30. He took a bad form, yes. Skeen stays because the Pirates are cheap. He's cheap contract, yes. I don't necessarily think that the Pirates are cheap. I just think that the ownership group there doesn't have the financial resources that other teams do. For me, the word cheap is a negative for a franchise. You have to have the money and not be willing to spend it for me to call you a cheap franchise. For instance, say you have $1 billion in assets, yet you're not willing to buy a $10 cheeseburger because it costs too much, even though it might be the best burger you've ever had. That, to me, is being cheap. Choosing to get the great value version of something rather than the higher quality version because you're trying to be more frugal. That can be a certain benefit. Knowing the value of $1, but at a certain point, you need to get a certain item and you choose to get a inferior product because you're trying to save a little bit of money. That's when the label of cheap makes sense. So in the case of the Pittsburgh Pirates, they don't necessarily have the financial resources of these other teams. They're not playing in a big market. They have to maximize their resources as best they can. They have to utilize the players that they have on their roster up until they get close to the end of their contracts and then try to peddle them away like we just saw what the Guardians did with Josh Naylor. That's going to be the kind of the blueprint for how the Pirates are going to be run until one of those factors changes. Now, could that mean that the Pirates will have to sell the team to a team or to an owner that can spend more money on the team? That'd be something that would help out that team as far as being able to spend more money, stay competitive in that division. But until that happens, I would be a little bit hesitant to say that the Pirates are a quote-unquote cheap franchise. Would I say that they don't have as much money as other franchises? Absolutely. Would I say that they don't spend as much money as other franchises? Absolutely. But I would hesitate on calling them cheap because they don't have the money that these other teams do. They just don't. It'd be like, I don't make a whole lot of money with my work, but I know I can still afford to, get a good meal. I can take my lady out to a nice dinner every now and again. I can still, take care of, paying the mortgage and those kinds of things. But I can't afford, a $10,000 a night hotel when I go on vacation, for instance. That would be insane. But to me, the word cheap, I think, is a little bit overused when it comes to these other teams and their spending habits. I think the Pirates deserve a little bit better than being labeled with the cheap label there. Brandon Lee, Jays management said, we spending this year, F it. Yes, they did with Santander. I think they will add one more big piece to this lineup, and I think they will add another starting pitcher. Jack Flaherty, to me, would be the perfect fit along with, say, Alex Bregman or Pete Alonso. Heck, maybe they get all three, and then we'll see if they can get that extension done with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. before they get to the start of spring training. Cowboys Nation, I've seen an article by one of the next-gen guys that said it's not velocity, it's forced rotation. Guys are trying to get on sweepers. There was a great video out there from Dr. Keith Meister, I believe, the Rangers trainer anyway. He's one of the greatest surgeons for baseball out there, and he had a great video out there that was on was it Fair Territory? I invite you guys to check that one out as far as some of the reasons he thinks injuries are happening and gives his best thoughts on how to avoid those issues as well. D-Rod, okay, better said, the Pirates will keep Skeens because they can't afford other experienced players. I do like that much better, yes. D-Rod, I was using the word cheap because it was used earlier. I got you. I know you didn't mean anything by it. You're good. You're good, D-Rod. Brandon Lee, Ross Adkins said at the presser today, ownership said you can spend, but spend on impact, no mid-level guys. Well, impact to me would be Alex Bregman. Impact to me with what's left on the market would be Pete Alonso. Impact with what's left would be Jack Flaherty. Mid-level guys to me would be like Nick Pivetta, who I think made the wrong decision declining the qualifying offer. Mid-level guys to me would be like Jurickson Profar, who's a good option as an outfielder, but I think they would be better use of the money if they brought in an Alex Bregman or a Pete Alonso. Profar, I think, is a great player. His market right now, we saw the article today that the Blue Jays and the Astros are the latest teams to kick the tires on him. I still think the Padres are the team that gets it done there, and I'm still waiting for the Padres to get their rear end in gear. I was expecting them to start making some moves after we saw the deal for Roki Sasaki and the Los Angeles Dodgers, but yet they're still holding pat with 3 major players on their roster headed towards free agency next year. Maybe they'll wait until they get into the season. They had no qualms about making trades early in the season last year. Maybe they do something again this year as well. Lincecum had some dominant years and fell off with injuries. Yes, he did. Robert, weird Dodgers can't keep pitchers healthy. They've had that issue over time. I mean, we've seen that with Tyler Anderson. We saw that with Andrew Heaney when he was there, and they resurrected both of their careers in injury-filled years as well. That kid was so filthy. Yes, he was. Brendan Lee Estevez too as the impact guys. Yes, having a great closer back there would certainly help out that roster as well. They were connected to Estevez much earlier than some of these other teams that are catching or that are just now turning their attention to him. With now the top 2 options off the board in Yates and Scott likely heading to the Los Angeles Dodgers, that leaves the Rangers looking for a closer and several other teams as well. Estevez is going to be the name in demand right now. Tigers are looking for some relievers. Some high-end relievers as well. Cubs are in that market. Blue Jays and Rangers all could be a fit for Estevez. Brendan, Profar has a case because of leadoff. I would make that case as well. I think he'd be a good fit long-term as well on that roster with George Springer's deal coming up as well. D-Rod, maybe Pivetta was looking for a multi-year deal, lower AAV, but looking for more than the total qualifying offer. I think Pivetta was looking for a Tyler Anderson type of deal that he got from the Los Angeles Angels. I don't think it's out there for him. I think he's going to end up settling for a 1-year $8, 1-year $13 million deal. But we'll see where he goes. Maybe the Red Sox take pity on him and offer him that qualifying offer money again and say, hey, for 1 year, we'll give you this money. You willing to take it? But they already spent that on Walker Buehler. They already brought in 2 other starting pitchers as well in Sandoval and Crochet. I just wonder if there's still a fit there for Nick Pivetta. But he's one guy. Jim Bowden had a great article on MLB.com about him being probably the case study for why you accept a qualifying offer if you're coming into free agency with a track record of injury performance like Pivetta did this year. Have one more great platform year and then go into free agency next year and not have that qualifying offer attached to you, and you'll do much better in free agency as well. Holly, I really hope the Rangers aren't doing closer by committee. Well, right now, if I had to guess who their closer will be to start this season, I think we're looking at a guy like Mark Church. I think he has a legitimate chance to be there. I think the Rangers will also start kicking some of the tires on Kenley Jansen, Carlos Estevez, Ryan Helsley, Duran from the Minnesota Twins. But if I had to pick one on the roster, I'd say Mark Church. If I had to pick one off the roster, I would say Ryan Helsley. Brandon, the qualifying offer screwed Pivetta. It was if there was no qualifying offer, he is on the Jays early. I would agree there, honestly. I think he'd be a great fit in that rotation. Maybe they take pity on him and give him that 3-year, $39 million deal that Tyler Anderson got. But again, that's qualifying offer. That's compensation going back to the Boston Red Sox there. Cowboys Nation, I didn't realize Pivetta led all pitchers in stuff plus. Pavetta's a pretty good pitcher, but he does have those injury red flags around him and some performance red flags around him as well over the years, but that qualifying offer did him no favors. Brendan, apparently the smoke with Scherzer to the Jays is real too. Yes, it is. I just think they're going to try to go with a little bit higher end pitcher, or at least a younger, longer term pitcher in Jack Flaherty, but I do think they can walk and chew gum. They could do both and help out their rotation this year as well. Holly, I really like Mark Church, so do I, but he hasn't proven it at the major league level. That's a big hole at the back end of your or the back of your bullpen when you're trying to make a push for a World Series. Now, of course, they'll have Josh Sborz coming back, but there's no guarantee he'll be healthy when he comes back, or that he'll be ready for the closer role again, or that he'll be as effective as he once was. Those are big issues for me if I'm the Rangers right now. I have to bring in some type of proven closer to at least push for that closing job opening day. And if Mark Church just, seizes, takes the bull by the horns and just runs with the opportunity, so be it. You'd love to see it. And then maybe you can trade away the closer you bring in at the deadline, because he doesn't really fit with the team. But at this point, I would rather have that proven guy at the back end of that bullpen. That Toronto rotation garbage, I don't know about that. I do like their mix of players. I don't think it's necessarily as good as any of the other rotations in that division, honestly. I think they're pretty solidly the fifth best rotation. But say you bring in a Flaherty, say you bring in a Scherzer, I think you bump up a little bit. I think you might be a little bit better than the Rays. I think the youth of the Red Sox could be great, but it also could have its difficulties as the growing pains of building a young starting staff anyway there. And then as far as the rest of the division goes, the Orioles are still missing a number one at the top of that rotation, and we'll see what happens. But Toronto, I still think they're a good team. I don't necessarily think they're bound for the playoffs this season unless they continue to add to this roster there as well. Bring Manoah back. I think he needs to, but I don't think he's going to be healthy to start the season either. I think I read an article where he's going to be missing quite a bit of time to start the season as well. Brendan, that Toronto rotation will give you 30 starts each. That's the thing. Cowboys, or at least 3 of the 5 starters will, and they aren't as bad as you make them all out sound. I would say Barrios really needs to improve as far as the ability to avoid giving up the home run. If he could do that, that would go a long way for that Toronto Blue Jays rotation. Now, if you bring in Jack Flaherty, you bring in Max Scherzer, you elevate the floor of this team. You also elevate the ceiling as well. Both of those guys, when they're on, could easily be a number 2 in somebody's rotation. But for me, Kevin Gausman would have to reestablish himself as an ace in this rotation, and then they'd really have something to look forward to there. Cowboys Nation, they're awful. Kevin couldn't K me. Barrios has been a home run king, and Bassett only shines in California when it's the A's. That's a little rough on Bassett. Not going to lie, though. Bassett's seen his best years, I will say that. Barrios does give up a lot of home runs, but when he doesn't give up the home run, he is very, very effective. Great strikeout numbers, and really limits the damage very well. But when he does give up home runs, which does seem to happen pretty much every start at some point over the last couple of years anyway with the Blue Jays, then that's when he gets into trouble. If he can limit those home run numbers, he could very easily be at the top of that rotation once again. As far as Gausman, I wouldn't necessarily say he's a prototypical number 1, but he has the talent to do so, and we'll see if he has a nice bounce-back season there. Brendan, he's coming back in July or August. Yes, I thought I read an article there that he was going to miss some time to start the season. She's been really bringing that guy back. Yes. Yes, they are. Alrighty. Appreciate you guys joining us. In case you guys missed the headlines today, Hall of Fame was announced that Ichiro Suzuki got into the Hall of Fame. He missed unanimous election by 1 vote. Whoever that one writer is really needs to have their head examined. The others who got in were CC Sabathia. Congratulations to him. Absolutely deserving. And Billy Wagner gets in on his final year of eligibility. Few guys had some great increases in their ballot standings anyway, and we'll see if they get in years in the future. And a few ultimately dropped off. The big news as far as baseball is concerned, the Los Angeles Dodgers once again add another pitcher to their pitching staff, bringing in Kirby Yates on a quote-unquote tentative deal. We'll see if we'll see if he passes the physical. We'll see what the numbers ultimately will turn into being. But they had a $375 million payroll before this move. They're going to have to spend some money on Kershaw as well. This roster is going to clear $400 million before it's all said and done, and we'll see what the Dodgers payroll ultimately looks like. I'm keeping my eye out for a Nolan Arenado trade to the Los Angeles Dodgers because I frankly just don't buy the arguments for why they haven't done it now. I mean, they just continue to spend and 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 spend. At a certain point, I don't believe you anymore when you say you don't have the money for Nolan Arenado. Let's figure it out because you just figured it out for 6 other guys to help out your roster. At a certain point, bringing in an impact bat like Nolan Arenado could be the difference-making piece for you. If, say, Freddie Freeman goes down and has a long-term injury, if he doesn't quite feel, back to being the Freddie Freeman of old, he had a great World Series, a Kirk Gibson-worthy performance there. But if you have issues there, bringing in a bat like Nolan Arenado could at least mitigate some of the damage there if he's not quite right to start the season. But I do think Arenado will be traded. I just think that the Dodgers' arguments that they're, out for that they don't have the resources for Arenado, that they don't have the roster flexibility for him, I just don't buy it anymore. I think the Dodgers can do whatever the heck they want at this point, and we'll see what they do. But keep your eyes peeled on Nolan Arenado in the coming weeks, and we'll see if Alex Bregman agrees to a deal by the end of the week as well. Those are some of the things we're watching out for. Cowboys Nation, you threw Ichiro a party and they left Sasaki, Otani, Yamamoto off the invite list. Okay. Aiden, Dodgers will get another piece. They are rich. They are. I do think they'll add one more piece around the trade deadline for sure. They'll notice some deficiency somewhere, and they'll add somebody there. Freddie won't carry them again. Yes, alrighty. Appreciate you guys joining us this evening. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. Follow us on X at UpsideSN and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. Check out the video that we posted earlier today about Kirby Yates and the Dodgers. Hit that like button on there as well. We'll be covering the entire MLB hot stove season right here at the Upside. Every single night we'll be live, so be sure to hit that like and subscribe and join us on this journey. We'll be with you throughout the regular season as well. So thank you guys for joining us this evening. Hank, no matter what, there's always an Upside Sports Network. Thank you, my friend. Y'all have a great evening out there. Stay safe, stay warm, everybody.